Janet Yellen was wrong, dead wrong about inflation, and now she is admitting it. We have a clip here from Janet Yellen talking exactly about that. Let's play it real quick.
I think I was wrong then about the path that inflation would take. As I mentioned, there have been unanticipated and large shocks to the economy that have boosted energy and food prices and supply bottlenecks that have affected our economy badly that I at the time didn't fully understand.
What do you mean you didn't fully understand? What? She also said at the time that it was a small risk given what was happening in the global economy as they were talking about a $1.9 trillion infrastructure and COVID relief package. And now we've printed at this point, I think $6+ trillion and many more money after that. So let's take a look at the inflation rate, which is the consequence of some of this stuff. Charlie Bellio put together an excellent chart or graph here that shows the inflation rates for all different goods and services. If you look at fuel, 80% year-over-year change from the April 2022 CPI report. Gas, 43%. Used cars, 22%. Gas utilities, 22%. Meat, fish, poultry, eggs. You hungry? 14%. New cars, 13%. Electricity, 11%. Food at home, 10%. Transportation, 8.5%. Overall CPI, 8.3%. But even food away from home, apparel, and shelter is up 5% to 7%. Real estate, whole different game. We've seen apartments not only going for 25% rate increases, 50% rate increases, and even higher than that. Home prices, the average home price in the United States right now is over $500,000. The average, the median, if you want to put it in that context, still over $400,000. And if you go look at those charts, they're going up a little bit, and then boom. And a lot of that is due to what we've done from an injection standpoint of the money that we put in the global economy. So we have another quote here from the Treasury, the official quote. This is what they said in response. And they said, the secretary was pointing out that there have been shocks to the economy that have been exacerbated, inflationary pressures, which couldn't have been foreseen 18 months ago, including Russia's decision to invade Ukraine, multiple successive variants of COVID, and lockdowns in China. What the hell are they talking about? Russia invaded Ukraine a few months ago, and they were blaming inflation on Russia literally 2 days after the invasion happened.
Putin's price hike.
Yeah, Putin's price hike. Y'all remember, people don't forget, that's literally what they were doing. They were blaming Russia 2 days after it happened. Everyone could have seen this coming, which is my point, right? She's held very, very, very important positions, right? The Federal Reserve Chair, Secretary of the Treasury, et cetera. She's been in government for a long time. She's been in economics for a long time. She studied a lot of these things. Bitcoiners, literally people on the internet, random people on the internet with Twitter accounts were screaming, saying that this was going to happen. Everyone knew it was going to happen, which leads me to believe that you have to look at the incentives for a bunch of these things, right? You tell people they can't go home. COVID happens. I get it, right? You want to slow it down. You want to make sure everyone can do what they do. But you tell businesses they can't work. You tell people they cannot work. You send everyone home. You inject a bunch of money into the economy. And as you're talking about $2 trillion, $3 trillion, $5 trillion, $6 trillion stimulus packages and money printing, you're saying that we don't think this is going to be inflationary. What? Like, come on. You knew that was going to happen. To what extent? Sure, maybe you could argue. The supply chain obviously calls part of it. But at the end of the day, everyone saw how much money was being printed. At one point, I believe it was like 50+% of the money in circulation was due to money printing, was newly created money. Anytime that happens, when you debase a currency like that, you're going to get inflationary pressure. And we've seen that over the last year. We've seen that over the last 2 years. And now she's admitting it. She's literally saying, we knew this was going to happen, or we didn't expect it, but now we see that it did happen. To the point, it was never non-existent. It was never transitory. It was certainly never good for you. And it's been here for a long period of time, which goes back to our original point of everyone needs to protect themselves. When this money was being printed, the absolute best thing you could have been doing is being an investor, is own assets that appreciated during this. The stock market went to the moon. Bitcoin went to the moon. Real estate prices went to the moon. And the people that got hurt the most are the 45% of Americans that do not own investable assets, that live paycheck to paycheck and spend the majority of their paycheck on things like gasoline, on things like shelter, on food, transportation, all the inflationary things that went up tremendously when the rich people, the wealthy people, the top 1%, the top 10%, or the people that own assets spend a very, 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 very small portion of their income on those things and benefited tremendously. I think that they knew that this was going to happen. I don't see how you can print all that money and not expect some inflationary pressures. Sure, maybe supply chains things made it worse. Maybe the war has now made it worse. Maybe there's other things going on. I get that nuance. But to say that you didn't expect it, then to say it was transitory, then to say it was good for you, and now to come out and admit that you were wrong and inflation has been here, it's been elevated, and you don't know why, seems very insincere. And I think it speaks to a lot of the people in power today, elected officials, and why, to be quite frank, we need something like Bitcoin, right? That the monetary policy is very clear. It doesn't depend on a meeting. It doesn't depend on how someone's feeling that day. It doesn't depend on other outside things. It literally is written in code. Everyone knows exactly what is going to happen, and you can make your decision based off that. What do you think, John?
I give her a little credit, Janet Yellen, for one, admitting that she was wrong years ago when she initially talked about inflation. She said in March 2021, there was a small risk of inflation. It was manageable. There are a ton of things, like you mentioned, that have come up, and she also mentioned, obviously, that have come up over the last few years to increase or accelerate the inflation that we're seeing here in America. But yeah, almost all of it, or I'd call it 80% if I had to pick a number out of a hat, that's due to what they did in the economy, and they should have foreseen that. We've been talking about it for pretty much a year and a half, 2 years at this point now internally, that inflation was going to be super high because they were printing a ton of money. They were literally handing out checks even to billionaires. They're giving George Soros got a government stimulus check, right? So this was government created. Instead of calling it Putin's price hike, you might as well just call it the United States government price hike, because that's what they did to the American people. The people who don't have investable assets are getting hurt, and it's also creeping into the higher income earners, right? So I read a stat today that was it 36% of Americans that make over 250K now live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, it's incredible. And what they've done is, and people don't like to talk about this, and they certainly don't like to talk about it, because people claim that people are scaring people about inflation. Rich people love inflation. They would literally sit there in silence and talk about it amongst themselves, but never publicly, because they own assets. That is very obvious. They own a ton of assets that are investable, and they go up in value when more money is pumped into the economy, when volatility increases. They own things that will increase in value, homes, equity in companies, things like that, right? Bitcoin, other things. So at the end of the day, what they've done, though, is they've divided and they've grown the wealth inequality gap, especially in the United States, to levels that we have never seen, or at least haven't seen in a long time. And the reason why that's happening is exactly what we mentioned earlier, which is they pumped a bunch of money into the system. People that own assets appreciated. They saw that appreciation. They benefited tremendously to the upside. And everyone else, the 45% of Americans that don't own any investable assets, got punished. They literally, we pulled up the chart the other day. They got a 5% raise. Too bad, you lost money last year, right? You're now making less money year over year because everything that you're buying, the basket of goods that you're buying on an annual basis or a daily basis, has gone up tremendously in value. They say 8.3% on an average. I think it's higher than that. I think a lot of other people think it's higher than that. We've seen evidence that would indicate that it's higher than that. So ultimately, like, everyone's in a different scenario. You're buying different things. All of these, everyone has different jobs. You're getting raises. Maybe you're not getting a raise, whatever. But at the end of the day, a lot of Americans are worse off than they were previously. And I think it's probably insincere to some degree to say we didn't expect that to happen, right? You printed money. You knew what was going to happen. Literally, there was how many people were on the internet saying we're going to be locked down for an extended period of time? There's going to be another strain. Like, people knew this stuff. And they're called conspiracy theorists. They're called idiots. They're called insane a lot of times. And in some instances, there are people on that side of the aisle that are wrong about some of these things. But in a lot of other instances, it almost becomes the consensus to some degree, where people realize that this is what is happening. And then people in the Fed and other places are late to react, or are just very insincere in their actions, right? Because when you're printing that much money, thank God someone said in the chat that the last plan didn't pass, Build Back America or whatever.
Yeah, Build Back Better,
yeah. Because that would have been devastating to add that much more money into the economy and print that much more money from an inflationary standpoint. So everyone that was saying, oh, you don't want to give money to America, the people that shut it down, right? Republicans and other people, they said, you don't want to give stimulus. No, the people that are getting money, a lot of times, in some instances, some people do realize, but in some other instances, they do not even realize what is happening to them, right? They think that they're just getting money from the government, free money. Who doesn't want free money? You're going to give me money? Hell yeah, give me money. But at the end of the day, what it's doing is, if they give you $5 and you go to buy a coffee that's $6 and now that coffee's $8, like, are you better or worse off, right? Because that $5 is going to be gone pretty quick, especially when you think about it in context of how long were we locked down for, right? Couple of years almost in some places. And how much money do people really get, right? Businesses got help more, obviously, but individuals, they got a few checks and that's it. And now you live in a world where everything is tremendously more expensive and you're worse off than you were before because you also didn't appreciate in that upside.
Completely agree. What is it? Interest rates are up. Personal savings are down. Personal debt, consumer debt is up. This is a terrible storm for the American person right now.